Well, hey, wanted to introduce Rob, his wife Audrey. Their kiddos are also around today. They are our friends from Czech Republic. They're missionaries over there with Josiah Venture, and that's a mission organization you've heard about. We partner with them as a church and a body of believers. So wanted to ask a few questions because we need to build some credibility for Rob before he gives the message today.
Right.
I also, the first time that I met Rob in person, we were like, hey, we landed in Poland. I was like, hey, can we have some authentic Polish food? I don't know if I need to move or not. Authentic Polish food. And he goes, yes, I've got you. And so then we ate at McDonald's.
Yes.
So we got to build some credibility for this guy. I wanted to ask you guys a couple questions. The first being, there's this mindset of if you're going over, being a missionary somewhere, you're these theological all-stars just crushing it for the kingdom.
Yes.
Which obviously in the resume.
100%. Yes.
And
Keep
so
going.
wanted to understand y'all's calling into being missionaries.
Well, almost in the same vein of, hey, let me get you some authentic Polish food and taking you to McDonald's. I am a pastor's kid who wanted nothing to do with ministry in any capacity whatsoever growing up. And so what was really funny is I finished college and I had an opportunity to stay in Ohio with my idiot buddies and get a job. I could move to Long Island and get a job with my parents. Or I could go to Prague by myself and utilize the connections that my dad had made with this Czech church. And I was like, I'll take door number 3. Not out of any great sense of calling, more just out of delaying growing up a little bit. And found myself over there, and suddenly everything that makes me who I am, which is my ability to communicate and outgoingness, is neutralized immediately. I can't read, I can't talk, I go and become the quiet kid in the corner. And it was death and the best thing that could happen to me at the same time. And that was the really kind of a put up or shut up moment from Jesus that was just like, hey, your Judeo-Christian bubble doesn't go everywhere, and so is this real or not? And that was the opportunity for me to really step into that place. And then also through youth ministry of all things too, which was absolutely nuts, I saw the value and looked back on those older people that had put time and effort into me when I was at that a teenage age, and it was like, oh, that was incredibly significant. I want to pass that on to this next generation, and that's really kind of how it all started. And then really for us, we when we got together, it was like, hey, I feel God's called me over here to the Czech Republic, and if you're cool with that, we can keep this going. And she was like, all right, I'm on board. But
I just love how when we look at who God made us each individually to be and how our giftings, our interests even align with what God's already doing, and we get to kind of step in and keep discovering the calling for this season, and it's maybe a different season and different times, but going, okay, where am I, and where am I going to be noticing where He's already moving, and how has He made me to step into that?
I love that. And I think what's really cool about this is that the call to be a missionary is not to check a box or reach a certain level.
No way.
Unless I'm wrong. You guys tell me.
no, it's not. It's not.
If you're a disciple of Jesus, you're a missionary. It's just where you are called to be. And for you guys, it happens to be a not so short distance away. So last thing, because we are all about life change. And so one of the reasons that we partner with Josiah Venture is discipleship is a vehicle that God uses, and y'all are about discipleship the same degree that we are. And so that's the mission. Life change happens when people experience the love and grace of Jesus. And so we'd love to hear a story about lives being changed.
Yeah, so Nikki, I met Nikki when she was 19. She's Czech, grew up in a single mom home with her brother. And when I met Nikki, she had become a believer actually through a ministry connected with Josiah Venture in her local church, where it's kind of like a pop rock choir weekly ministry. Kids can come and just sing songs, learn music instruments, but hear about the love of Jesus. And she really came into that and goes, I need that. I need the love of a father. But since she was 19, she actually began to get more involved in the ministry and was pretty shy girl. Started doing a bachelor's program in missional theology because she's like, I'm feeling this call to more in my life. I've gotten to walk with her over the past 4 years as well as other missionaries, discipling in different seasons and different places of her life, seeing how she has stepped into going, all right, God's calling me into this leadership role in my church. And actually then at some points going, now I'm feeling his pull in a different way and discerning where is he wanting me to be. But just to see the change in the last 4 years of this young woman who in the last 4 years, her brother has also chosen to follow Christ, seeing her stepping into another program where she's studying humanitarian aid, going like, where is God wanting me to be? From some shy, it's not about the confidence she built up in herself or in her giftings. It was that she was loved by Jesus, has a father who loves her heavenly father, and people coming alongside her and just getting to disciple her in different seasons is a beautiful, beautiful thing.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. We are all about life change, and so I know we're going to hear more stories as we move forward. Hey, they're going to be at the resource table after service. Would love for you. They're mission partners, not just because we partner with Josiah Venture, but we partner with y'all as a family. And so please get to know them. Like, they are a huge blessing to us, and we want to be a blessing to them. And I'm not getting lunch with them after service, so if you want to bring Rob to some authentic American food, there's a McDonald's. All right, guys, go ahead and turn your attention to the screen.
Well, good morning, everybody. I told first service that intro was so epic. I was not prepared. So set your expectations low again for the level of epicness that's coming right now. But all that to say, yes, we are the Chestnuts. That's Audrey, and then Stella and Adria are our two daughters, and we are from the Czech Republic. We've been there for 13 years with Josiah Venture. JV, as we call it, is a movement of God among the youth of Central and Eastern Europe that finds its home in the local church and transforms society. And we're youth-focused in particular because we recognize that those young Josiahs, those young men and women who will develop and walk in faith, can have a vast impact on the people around them. And we do that in a lot of different ways. We do it through, like Audrey said, we have a weekly music ministry called Fusion, where they come and they play instruments and they sing, but they also hear about the gospel. We have English camps that we do in the summer. We have a college program. We have a lot of discipleship materials and training capabilities, things that we do, different leadership development things. And so it's the gamut, but we really love it. And truly for us to come and be a part of what God is doing, not only in the Czech Republic, but here in Connecticut, and to come back to our supporting churches and to say, first, thank you for your support of us. Also, this is who we are, is really fantastic. And we take opportunities in the summer. We have a couple weeks. Usually we just travel back and say, hey, this is us, just to shake hands and meet you. And we have 5,000 prayer cards in the back that I please need you to take because I do not want to bring them back with me. So there's a bunch in the back. We, again, are just so thankful to continue our partnership with different churches, especially we have that heartbeat of discipleship. And Josh and Stephen were able to come and visit us this past January and just to see a little bit of what was going on. And it was like, hey man, we're going to be there in the summer. I would be willing to preach if you're okay with that. He said, yeah, that's great. And then, you check in a couple months later and I said, okay, so what's the game plan? Because usually every church I go to when we're speaking, you never know what you're going to get. Sometimes they're in the midst of a series and they say, oh, you can do whatever you want. Sometimes it's, talk a little bit about this. We're going to do a Q&A thing, whatever. And I said to Stephen, so what are you guys doing? And he said, oh, we're preaching through the book of Acts. I was like, yes. I mean, could you be more better for a missionary person than to do the book of Acts? Fantastic, awesome. Which one do I get? And he said, you get chapter 22. Now, I don't know if you've recently read Acts 22 in any capacity whatsoever, but it's essentially just Paul's conversion story again. And he's just telling it to some friends. And so when I first read that, I was like, what am I doing with this? Like, come on, give me the when they go to the thing and the stuff. He's just telling something everyone's already heard and probably knows. How is this anything? And then to sit with it for a while and actually begin to unpack it a little bit more, I found a number of things that I thought were really compelling and, again, really just excited to share with all of you this morning. Because, again, if you're going through Acts and you're reading through, you could totally come to Acts 22 and be like, okay, he's starting to tell a story. Oh, yeah, I've heard this already. Skip. Let's move on to the other interesting stuff. But really, what Paul is doing here in chapter 22, if you remember from last week, if you remember from last week, because you were in 21 last week, right? See, that is helpful on that end. Yeah. So in 21, he comes back to Jerusalem. He begins to talk. People get all stirred up. He gets accused of being some Egyptian terrorist, which I would love to know more about. That seems interesting. But he's like, no. Hey, let me actually speak to the crowd. Let me tell them what's going on. And, he begins to tell them his story. And stories are incredibly significant to us as human beings. I'm the director of communications for Josiah Venture, so I am all about stories. I mean, from our social media things to the videos we make to the messages we send out, we want to communicate the stories of what is going on in our part of the world, and we want to hear stories from all of you as well about who you are and what you do and what life is like here. Because think about it, like, when you go and have a meal with someone, what do? You don't sit and recite a list of facts, right? You don't go out for brunch and be like, the weather today is 79 degrees with a chance of rain. Today is August 24th. Yes. No, you tell stories. You talk about what happened over your week, or you talk about something that took place someplace else. Stories unite us. Stories connect us. They move us. We watch stories. We go to movies. We have shows. Now you listen to stories with podcasts and audiobooks, and you read about them. I mean, stories are everywhere. And this type of story that Paul is telling is really significant because it's his testimony. It's not just any random story about where he was and what he was doing. It's how he became who he is right now. And I would say that our testimony is one of the most important stories that we can tell as followers of Jesus. So we're going to go through this a little bit today, all right? So Acts 22, it begins like this. Brothers and fathers, listen now to my defense. And when they heard him speak to them in Aramaic, they became very quiet. Okay, those two verses are actually super significant, and we haven't even gotten started yet. So the first part is when he says brothers and fathers, he is addressing the Jewish audience in a humble and kind of open-handed way because he understands the culture that he is engaging with at that moment. He knows who is in the crowd, he's aware of who they are, and he knows how he needs to speak to them. Then he takes it a step farther, and he actually, if you look at verse 2, it says, when they heard him speak to them in Aramaic, they became very quiet. Now, Aramaic is the language that the people there use and speak, and so therefore he could have, because now here, let's do a little history test. Who is in charge during this time frame? Yes! Remember everybody, if you're doing Bible things and someone asks who's in charge, 9 out of 10 time, Rome, especially in the New Testament. Actually, in the New Testament, it's always Rome. So just Rome. Great, you get a prize, sir. See the head pastor about what that prize is. Okay. So Rome is in charge, so he could speak in Latin or he could speak in one of the more appropriate languages of the empire, but no, he speaks to Aramaic. He addresses the people right where they are. And this is a culturally significant thing that Paul is doing, and he is making a very intentional choice. So then he goes on. He says, then Paul said, I am a Jew, born in Tarsus of Cilicia, but brought up in this city. Under Gamaliel, I was thoroughly trained in the law of our fathers and was just as zealous for God as any of you are today. I persecuted the followers of this way to their death, arresting both men and women and throwing them into prison. And also the high priest and all the council can testify. I even obtained letters from them to their brothers in Damascus and went there to bring these people as prisoners to Jerusalem to be punished. Now, the crowd that's listening to this, they're all doing this. This is what we like, okay? We are no fans of these way people, all right? We are not interested in anything they're doing. They're causing trouble. We've been dealing with them before. This guy I can get on board with. And what Paul is doing right now is he's sharing his testimony, but he is setting up who he is in order to explain who he has now become. And every good testimony is going to carry three significant parts, all right? There's the who you were before you met Jesus. There is the process of meeting Jesus and what that was like. And then subsequently, your life afterwards, once you have decided to follow him. Now, as I said earlier, I'm a pastor's kid. I grew up in the 90s where Christian testimonies were all the rage, okay? We didn't have social media folks, but we had itinerant traveling people who would come to your church and they would tell you about how they were ninja assassin mafia informants. And then they came to meet Jesus. And this was like the most entertaining thing you ever had back in the day, all right? And it would be these long drawn out, and it was always like the laundry list of everything they had ever done of like, I've murdered 45 people and then I embezzled all of this money and then I was about to kill myself and then boom. It was always dramatic and amazing, And you were just like, so caught up in the things that they were doing. And then you'd hear the story and now I'm here. It was incredible, They all sounded like that as well, too, especially the mafia people. And I'm so glad, again, just to be back in the East Coast where I can make this, like I can do my voices and people appreciate this. This doesn't work in the South. I'm just saying, so thank you. Thank you. But your testimony always needs to balance certain elements of things, okay? And so like oftentimes, when we hear all different types of testimonies in Central and Eastern Europe, we give testimonies. We have U.S. teams that come and help us out, and they'll give testimonies. And inevitably you get that one kid who's like, here is everything I've ever done wrong. And then I met Jesus at the end. And to him, it's like you gave him an opportunity to air all of his dirty laundry and what a horrible, terrible person that he was and all the people he dated and whatnot and those sorts of things. Or you get the people who are just like, there's nothing, maybe I met Jesus and then someone asked me to come and talk, blah, blah, blah. Like your testimony carries some significance. And every one of our testimonies communicates a story that actually resonates with somebody else. And it's funny because I know I made the joke about the mafia, ninjas or whatever they were. When I was a young, impressionable teenager, that's the testimony I wanted because I'm a pastor's kid. I've done nothing interesting ever, especially by the time I was 16, Like, I didn't have some huge, compelling sin crisis of faith or anything along this line. It was like, my parents, my dad's a pastor. I go to church every Sunday, sometimes 3 times a Sunday. I may have been born there. I don't even know. I'm always in youth group. I prayed a prayer at 12. I did all the things. It was never anything compelling. And what's fascinating is later on in my life now in Central and Eastern Europe, the young people that I would interact with, they actually don't connect to the mafia ninja assassins. They actually want the person whose life was kind of vanilla, if you will, and not very interesting because they view themselves in the same way. The person who did tons of murders and all that sort of stuff is like, yeah, that guy obviously needs Jesus, but not me. Like, I haven't done anything wrong. Why do I need help? And so my testimony actually is able to connect to them because they see someone who's in a similar place, not out of obligation and requirement, but actually someone who made a tangible choice when it seems like, but your life is fine. Why would you do this? So you don't know what your story is going to be able to communicate to people. And what's fascinating too is that when we hear these testimonies of these young people, in the States, at least, it was, I wasn't a Christian, I became a Christian, and then now I'm in youth group and I have 100 new friends and Jesus is my new bicycle and everything's fantastic and it's a wow. And for these kids, when they accept Christ, they get kicked out of their homes. In Poland, if you are Polish, you are Catholic. And to become a Protestant, you might as well say I'm becoming a Scientologist. It is completely against the grain in the culture of what exists there. We see young people who, when they make a decision for Jesus, they've been in English camp and they've heard the gospel presentation 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, 5 year, maybe the 6th year they finally go and make a decision because they have had to weigh this out and say, this is what's going to happen in my life if I follow Christ. It's going to be completely antithetical to everything else in my family. And so our testimonies are significant. They carry a story, they carry change, they carry loss and sacrifice in some capacity, even if just simply of yourself. So let's keep going with Paul, because this is when it really, this is the fun part, if you will. About noon, as I came near Damascus suddenly, a bright light from heaven flashed around me. I fell to the ground and heard a voice say to me, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? Who are you, Lord? I asked. I'm Jesus of Nazareth, whom you are persecuting. My companions saw the light, but they did not understand the voice of him who was speaking to me. What shall I do, Lord? I asked. Get up, the Lord said, and go to Damascus, and there you'll be told all that you have been assigned to do. Now, that's significant in a lot of different ways. It is the blinding, the power actually meeting Jesus. But Jesus telling Paul in that moment, this is what you have been assigned to do. Could you imagine that if you met someone for the very first time and it's just like, hey, I'm Rob. Oh, but here, you in the first row. Yeah, you. What, your name, you are? Bill? Yes. Hey, I'm Rob. I have things for you, Bill. And he will do them. Wow, this is great. Honey, where's that list? No, okay. So it's like, Paul is given an assignment, and in that moment, suddenly he recognizes this is significant. Not only have I talked to God, but God has something for me to do. That is something I obviously will need to tell other people about. So even in this moment where he is in the midst of this huge crowd, he's like, I have a job, and he knew his job from the outset. And again, we're seeing it in this way with Paul. There was his life before that he's communicating. He communicates the story of how he met Christ, and now he begins to communicate his life after. So, my companions led me by the hand into Damascus because the brilliance of the light had blinded me. A man named Ananias came to see me. He was a devout observer of the law and highly respected by all the Jews living there. He stood beside me and said, Brother Saul, receive your sight. And at that very moment, I was able to see. Then he said, the God of our fathers has chosen you to know his will and to see the righteous one and to hear words from his mouth. You will be his witness to all men of what you have seen and heard. And now, what are you waiting for? Did you know there was a what are you waiting for verse in the Bible? I did not until I was doing this. So, 22:16, and now, what are you waiting for? Get up, be baptized, and wash your sins away, calling on his name. So this is Paul again. He's explaining this aspect of his story. He's laying out his testimony to this crowd that is listening and balancing all three parts accordingly. In 17, he says, when I returned to Jerusalem and was praying at the temple, I fell into a trance and saw the Lord speaking. Quick, he said to me, leave Jerusalem immediately because they will not accept your testimony about me. Lord, I replied, these men know that I went from one synagogue to another to imprison and beat those who believe in you. And when the blood of your martyr Stephen was shed, I stood there giving my approval and guarding the clothes of those who were killing him. Then the Lord said to me, go, I will send you far away to the Gentiles. Now, a little bit of extra context for this one. After Paul has this experience and he receives a sight again from Ananias, He goes away for 3 years into Arabia, and some scholars say that he was studying. This is when he was learning. He was building his case of what it was to then go and communicate the gospel to so many people. So he returns to Jerusalem, which again is the hotbed of where all of this really started. And it's fascinating too because he's talking about Stephen. So let's go way back to the beginning of Acts. Where was Stephen when he was killed? You can answer. Jerusalem, fantastic. Yes, he was in Jerusalem. Paul was standing nearby, and Stephen was killed because he was doing this exact same thing. He had gone to the elders and the rulers and told them the good news of Jesus Christ, the gospel, and they subsequently killed him. And now here is Paul saying to those same people, guess what? I'm doing the same thing. I'm in the exact same place, in the exact same situation that Stephen was, because I am here to do the exact same thing. And, Help me, Lord, for real, exactly. But Paul, he's got another plan in mind, and he just goes straight for it. Well, actually, he never even got to say, help me, Lord, because as soon as he says, go and go and I'll send you far away to the Gentiles, then this is what's crazy to me, all right? Because you get a real picture of who Paul is in this moment, all right? This is obviously a very loving, welcoming, nice church that I can speak in front of right now, okay? Yes? Okay, you guys were way quicker than first service. So, I'll come back to second service. First service got me a little antsy there for a second, all right? So, okay, good, I feel better. But, I can speak in front of you and I can say a lot of different stuff. And at no point in time do I feel like, even if I were to maybe say something that might be a little, I don't know, on the edge or something along this line, nobody's going to get up and the first 4 rows are not going to empty and you're going to rush the stage and grab me and carry me out through the back wall or something along that line, okay? That just doesn't happen normally, all right? But so Paul is very aware of who he is in front of. He is very aware of what they have done, very aware of what they can do, but he does not relent. He keeps going on with the story. Now, in my mind, if I was in this situation, I would couch a little bit of this information and be like, yes, God spoke to me and I was given this great message. And I would love to tell you about the message if you meet me afterwards in the fellowship hall. That's all I have to say right now. Look, a bear. Something to get out of the situation. But instead, no, he is bold, he is direct, he speaks openly about what God has communicated to him because Test 1, 2. Hey, there we go. It's an answer to prayer. So, in the same way that Paul, this was great because that transition throws everything off in the same way. That's exactly what Paul did. He just throws a chaos grenade into the audience because when he mentions the Gentiles, how do the people respond? The crowd listened to Paul until he said this. Then they raised their voices and shouted, "Rid the earth of him. He's not fit to live." And as they were shouting and throwing off their cloaks and flinging dust in the air, the commander ordered Paul to be taken into the barracks. Now, there's also something significant that's happening in this very moment because I don't know if anybody's been to Israel or even the Middle East in general. Dust is everywhere, all the time. Even in modern era, there is dust all over the place. So let's go back, it's 2026, there's dust. Let's go back to the year 0, there's a lot of dust, all right? So dust was this kind of everyday thing that was all on and all around, and nobody gave too much attention to it. But the fact that they are flinging out their cloaks and throwing the dust off is saying, even the most insignificant things, I don't want to have any contact with this person. He is so truly terrible. And then they fly into a rage. And the Romans, remember who's in charge? Rome, right. And the Romans, when they see an uprising, what do? Squash it. Because that's what Romans do best. Governance and violence. So the commander comes in, he grabs Paul, and then they throw him in and they say, hey, we're going to take care of this. And they go to flog him. All right, let's read this one. The commander ordered Paul to be taken into the barracks. He directed that he be flogged and questioned in order to find out why the people were shouting at him like this. Now, I don't know how your meetings go in your businesses and things along this line, but usually the questions come before the flogging. So if you need to take a Roman approach, you can try flogging and then ask the questions and see how things go. Again, this is the Roman way of dealing with things. We do violence, then we figure out what's actually going on. But this is the part of the story that I really love and find really fascinating. Okay. As I said earlier, stories are super duper important, and there's a lot of key stories, just a way of getting to know me. I love Lord of the Rings, and I love Star Wars. So I'm giving you okay, great. This is good. Now, this is where it gets contentious, because I'm giving you an option for this next illustration. Do you want a Lord of the Rings illustration or a Star Wars illustration? Lord of the Rings it is. Fantastic. First service was Star Wars. You guys get Lord of the Rings. Great. So Paul is stretched out. He's out like this, and he does the most nonchalant. I imagine his voice and tone was just like I'm talking right now, because he's stretched out in front of him. And what does Paul do? Is it legal for you to flog a Roman citizen who hasn't even been found guilty? Boom. Okay, so the Hall of Meduseld, Edoras, Gandalf the Grey comes to Theoden and to confront Saruman's little witch there, Grima Wormtongue, and he's in his cloak and he comes in along this line. And now, I'll reference the movie for those of you who haven't read the books, and if you haven't read the books, shame on you. So he comes in and he's in the cloak, and then, what does he do? He faces off with Saruman, and Saruman says, oh, you have no power here. And what does Gandalf do, everybody? Boom, he flings off the cloak, and then the whole, boom, it lights up. No, he's no longer Gandalf the Grey, he's Gandalf the White, and the whole room goes, whoa. I mean, everything changes, and it's the same dynamic. When Paul says, I'm a Roman citizen, it's a boom. Like literally, you guys, the other fella leaves the room, runs and tells the commander. The commander comes to Paul and says, how did you get to have your citizenship? I had to pay for it. Now remember, Paul, still like this. Well, I was born with it. And then it's just, again, it's another boom. And then actually, this is the best part. He says, I was born with it. And then, they go back and forth a couple times. Those who were about to question him withdrew immediately. So here's the thing that you don't understand in the midst of this story. We talked at the very beginning of Paul understands who his audience is, all right? So he addresses them accordingly. He speaks to them in a language in which they would understand. And so this way he's able to interact with the Jewish community that is present at the time. But he also has this cultural dynamic of being a Roman citizen. So he is also able to interact with the other culture that is existing at the same place in the same time. And church, I want to tell each and every one of you, you have that ability. You have that cultural understanding and that dynamic to communicate the gospel in a way that people will know and understand, but also be able to interact with. And this is the part where we see the message and the messenger of the gospel are so important and so critical. It truly changes everything when we don't just look at our stories like, yeah, I'll just kind of do a thing, but like, no, you've been given a power through the Holy Spirit to communicate in the same way that Paul has here, but you need to know who you're speaking to, why you're speaking to them, and in a way in which they will be able to understand it. So we are missionaries in the Czech Republic, and that is cool. We have been doing that for 13 years. We love it. And being an American in the Czech Republic sometimes is really, really cool because I'm different. And I'm a New Yorker. So, for the first time I ever went to my mechanic shop, and I can speak Czech, okay? Now, if you ask my children, they will say no. They speak Czech because they go to a Czech public school, they came home, and they were fluent. It's gross and not fair. But so the first time I went to my mechanic, I go in and I'm just like, hello, sir, pleased to have automobile problem fix you can, maybe, ? And he's immediately like, who are you? And where are you from? I'm like, I'm Rob, and I'm an American from New York. Baba! Suddenly it's like, what? You would come and to me, and you want me to fix your, what? It's a superpower. It's awesome. There's so many times we've gone to parent-teacher meetings or class meetings in our school, and we just kind of look around like, we don't understand. And everyone's like, do you need some help? We can translate for you. Yes, thank you. That would be great. So it's sometimes being the foreigner is super helpful. And then also when we're interacting with these students and stuff, they want to listen to us because we're different. We came from someplace else. Why would we be here? There's an interest. But there's also a point. We can't go as deep as someone who understands the culture and the context and the language. This is what we do with JV is we say, hey, it's not about us. We actually want to train up those nationals. We want to train up women like Nikki, who is going to be far more effective in the people that she reaches and who she communicates with than we ever will be. And that's the dynamic. And see, this is why Paul is who he is, because he understands who he's interacting with. And so, church, we have had to learn in the same way of, in these 16 different countries, these 16 different cultures, what it is like to work with nationals of different historical backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds, all things along this line. But our stories, again, and our testimony is the most potent thing that we have to communicate the gospel of Jesus Christ, because they want to know about you before they want to know what you know. We have had a massive tectonic shift over the last 10 years in Central and Eastern Europe. And really, when I first started doing this ministry, you would have these intellectual, apologetic throwdowns every night, if you were at an English camp. And it has moved to this post-communist generation. They have all of the things their parents and grandparents never have, but they're still empty inside. And so they're saying, why are you here? Why are you doing these things? And what is it about you that is different that I can't wrap my head around? Tell me what that is, why you believe the things you believe, why you're doing the things that you're doing. So, and here's the great part about it, is we get to do this in the Czech Republic because that's where God, for whatever reason, has put us. But 180 Life Church, you have that same thing here in Connecticut, all right? So, growing up, the missionaries were always, like Josh said, they're on the upper echelon and this sort of stuff. No, we all are called to a specific mission field. I don't know your friends. I don't know your families. I don't know your neighborhoods and coworkers and things along this line. You do. That is your mission field. And so we get to come and be encouraged by what is happening here in Connecticut, just in the same way we hope you get encouraged by what's happening in the Czech Republic. I wrote this in my notes, and my wife told me it's the corniest thing I've ever done, but I'm going to do it anyway, because just as much as God has called us to the CZ, he has called you to the CT. Yes. Boom. Put that on a t-shirt, everybody. Great. But hey, you are a part of what is happening in Central and Eastern Europe, and one of our favorite things is to tell you some stories about what's going on there. So I brought along some pictures as well, too, and we'll click through these. So first off, I'll brag on my wife. So Audrey, one of her other roles, she's trained as a spiritual director, and she actually helps lead a number of spiritual retreats for our different teams. So this is actually a photo from a retreat that she did with our team up in Latvia. And that is Martin Luther on the wall right there. And that door is about this high. They're very small in Latvia. No, it's just some old building, whatever. There's so many old buildings, it's ridiculous. You guys think you have old buildings? Come on. But one of the things that's great is, so she was able to do a retreat in Latvia. She also did a retreat for our team in Ukraine this past year as well, too. They are under incredible stress, incredible difficulties, and a need to be refreshed and to have time away from ministry and sirens and things along this line is super important. So she's been able to do that for a number of our teams. She continues to do that in various areas as well with her spiritual direction. The only problem is, of course, she never takes a picture of the people that are having their retreat, but this is a nice picture of the place they were in Latvia. Great. So we'll go to the next one. And this is her, though. We also had our first ever JV women's retreat this past year. We had 130 of our women, and she was on the core team that helped craft and put it all together. And so this is her leading one of the sessions. And then on the right here, this is her from her college ministry that she was talking about. And that girl in the glasses, that's Nikki. So that's her. So now you can put a name to a face. And then you got Raimonds on the left. He's from Latvia. You got Adam in the middle. He's from Czech. And you got another Adam. Oh, Mark on the right from Slovakia. And so this was her cohort from last year at their graduating party. All right, we'll go to the next one. Like I said, I'm the director of communications, and this is my team. We're half Czech, half American, which is really fun. And so, like I said, we do social media, we do our printed materials, we do videos, we do other stories and things we've been working on. We also do annual conferences. And so the next photo is from our annual fall conference. This is the bulk of our staff. There's about 380 JV missionaries throughout those 17 different countries. And this really sets the direction for our year. And so we help craft the program, the look, the feel. We get the speakers in place, and we do that every September. And actually, we're going back in about a week, and I'll jump right back on board with that one. One of the other things that's really fun that we get to do this year is we've started our video production team. And we used to just do videos that were primarily around evangelism because we like hearing the testimonies of how people came to know Jesus. But this year we're having a focus on our discipleship stories. And so this is the guy with the phone there in the middle. That's Ur. He's from Slovenia. And then right next to him in the sunglasses is Johnny. And he's been in Slovenia for over 20 years. And so we went down, that's Hansa there on the left, and Jacob took this picture. So the three of us went down to kind of capture their story. And I wanted to bring you guys a little clip, if you'd be interested, of this is raw. We haven't finished it or colorized and all that stuff. But just give you a snapshot of some of the things we're going to be communicating more of. Roll it.
There was a game plan in mind that you actually had for him?
Oh, yeah, no, with Ur, you didn't fit the mold. No, you didn't fit the mold.
That's how it looked like.
Yes.
You know, you go like, who wouldn't be scared of that dude?
I wasn't scared of you, but I for sure could tell. It was like, I was worried about the influence that you would have.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're a little bit rough around the edges.
For sure.
And I kind of, I don't know, I feel like this spot right in front of the church is where I would wrestle with that a little bit. Like,
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
maybe yes and no. Yeah, there was a general hope that he would go from like where he was to where he is today. It was not a linear path.
When I think about it from someone who is a leader in a church now, you know, I think like there's something that happens between that door, the stairs, and then here.
Yeah.
Where you go, like all of your, you know, flags and sensors go crazy, and you go, is this person gonna walk into the church, or is he gonna take people out of this space? And so that's for sure the, you know, the tension that you feel.
This other one is kind of like parenting, where it's like you have hopes for the ways that you want your children to grow up. And I think it's the same thing with discipleship, where there's a lot about who you are today. That's actually even a better picture of you and your identity, who you are as a man, as a father, as a leader. It's neat seeing it come to fruition in a fuller way, because I feel like it really is God's plan for your life that I've gotten to be a shareholder in.
It's just fun stuff. Oh yeah, you can totally clap. Totally. These are fun things we get to capture and stories we'll get to share more of in the year to come. And again, snapshots of discipleship like that don't follow linear paths, like Audrey said. They kind of come from different directions and different times. Like this is what we live for, and it's really exciting to see it in different ways. And that's kind of the macro big JV view, but also like in a local context, what does it look like for us? So we attend a Czech church. I help preach from time to time. And we also have that music ministry. We call it Fusion that takes place at our church. And so this next photo, so this is Nelcha. So Nelcha actually, similar to Nikki, got involved in Fusion and then subsequently became a Christian through it, and now is one of the leaders of our local Fusion. And this next photo, and it's not a photo, it's a GIF or a GIF. I still don't know how to say it. But so that's Marek, Nelcha, Clara, and Jancha. And so I have 2 kids of my own. These are my 2 girls. But I also have 4 kids, and that's them. And so we've been meeting for the last 4 to 5 years regularly. And they're kind of like, these are the ones I look after. But now they are the leaders of the Fusion ministry, and they're the leaders of our Fusion camp this summer. And so in the next photo, we actually get to see that right there in the middle of that photo, that little smiling face, that's my eldest daughter, Stella, who is now attending camp and who now will be attending Fusion. So I have been able to pour into these 4 kids who will now be pouring into the life of my own daughter. And that is discipleship in action, everybody. That's what we want to see and be a part of, is one generation building into the next, building into the next. And we hope that you are encouraged by what you are a part of in Central and Eastern Europe, but we are also encouraged by what you are a part of here in Connecticut. And so we are working in tandem with this 180 Life. And again, I just want to say thank you for your support of us, for your care for us. And we're excited for more opportunities as well to see ways in which we can partner. And again, just Proverbs 25:25, like cold water to a weary soul is good news from a distant land. And I hope you have been encouraged. You have been cold water for us as we hope to be cold water for you. Thank you again for all that you do, and let's pray. Jesus, we're grateful for your church around the world, that we get to all partner together in your mission. Lord, that we all have a story that we get to tell, that just like Paul in these unlikely moments, we can stand up and we can be bold, but we also know what it is we're communicating. We know what it is that we're saying, and we know who you are and what you've done in our life. And so I pray for this church as they build into their mission field. I thank you again for this opportunity to see them and get to know them. And thanks again for just being a part of this incredible family. Amen.